Lovely to have you here. Welcome to the Electro Revolution channel. My name is Michael and I'm a car and tech enthusiast. In this episode, we're going to go through some electricity suppliers here in Australia, primarily for the purposes of people with solar, home batteries and EV cars. And even if you don't have all of those configurations, all of those set up at your home, I'm sure you'll still be able to pick up some tips based on my personal experiences between all of those vendors. So number one, we'll be starting with AGL and the plan I was on with AGL prior to getting a home battery. Number two, how I moved to Amber. And number three is how I moved to GloBird Energy and I ended up being there. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. So just to set some context for this episode, I've been with AGL Energy for a number of years, especially when I was in the old property. We had solar panels for the old property, but they didn't actually do much because they're old panels. I think the whole roof had 2 kilowatts of energy, and the purpose of that was essentially to send to the grid and get maybe 5 cents back per kilowatt. It didn't actually make too much difference to the bill. However, when we moved to our new property, we were able to have the option of the latest solar panels, which definitely work differently to the way older solar panels work. So we've been here now for about 3.5 years. And when I first moved into this property, it was only a matter of months before I installed those solar panels. Now, just to give some context, we were having bills of about $380 to $400 a month. So about $1,200 a month. And we still saw steady increases in those bills every single month. Our usage is about 40 to 50 kilowatts a day. Sometimes we would reach 60 kilowatts a day. But all the times we were paying. No matter what, you can't actually remove those bills we were paying. So when we got the solar panels, our bills reduced by approximately 45 to 50%. So we would typically start to pay $180 to $200 a month, which still meant about $550 or $600 a quarter. Still a lot cheaper. You know, we did get a return on investment on those panels for about 18 months or 1 year and 10 months. And of course, after that, it's clear savings. So they do pay themselves off pretty quickly in electricity bills. Now, in about mid-2025, I think it was 1st of July 2025, our federal government introduced the home battery scheme for people to actually install home batteries and get a massive discount on them. The federal government is willing to pay 30% of the total cost of the battery system. Remarkable. So they initially budgeted for about $2 billion up until 2030. And of course, every single year, the rebate would go down. I think it was every 12 months at the time. Now, in the first 6 months, almost that entire $2 billion was used up. Then the government started to say, okay, what do we do at this point? Let's make the home battery rebate scheme extended, give it more funds, but generate some limits. And those limits were essentially meant to stop people installing larger batteries that they really didn't need because they were eating up all the taxpayer dollars or all the budget for the home battery scheme. So that was introduced on the 1st of May, 2026. Now I'm making this video on the first week of May. So this is like the 2nd of May, 2026. And on the 1st of May, 2026, the home rebate scheme still exists, but it's in a much less capacity than it was before. So it doesn't have really the strength to go for those 40 kilowatt or 50 kilowatt batteries. You end up actually paying more. Now, I'm not covering all the specifics on that, but essentially what it says is you get a 30% rebate on 14 kilowatts. And then anything above the 14 kilowatts, you get a reduced rate. And anything above that one, I think it was 24 kilowatt, you get an even reduced rate on top of the 24. So if you want things like 28 kilowatt batteries or 32 kilowatt batteries, it's actually costing you a lot more after the 1st of May 2026 than it did prior to the 1st of May 2026. So what we saw during especially the first half of this year, prior to the May deadline, was a rush for batteries. And guess what? I was one of those people. I started getting quotes from all over the place, and looking at different battery systems which would suit me. What I ended up doing was getting the battery system plus extra solar on the roof, because I know solar works. I know solar pays for itself in a very, very short time, unlike the batteries do. And I thought, if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it once. So I performed an upgrade to go from 8.76 kilowatts. I installed some 475 watt panels on the roof, I think 7 of them. And that took me to about 12.1 kilowatts. So that's what I'm seeing now as of today in solar production. But in February of 2026, I also, at the same time, got a SiGenergy 32 kilowatt battery, which is essentially 4 8 kilowatt modules with a 20 kilowatt inverter. So to sum up for you, I've got solar panels, I've got a home battery at 32 kilowatt, and I've got 2 EVs. If you've been watching the channel for a while, a BYD Atto 3 and a BYD Seal. The BYD Atto 3 has a 60 kilowatt battery, and the BYD Seal an 82 kilowatt battery. So you can imagine how much charging is required, because we do drive quite a lot. You can imagine how much charging is required to do the battery every single day, and every few days the vehicles. That's a lot of energy to charge all of those batteries. So prior to February 2026, before installing the home battery, I was with AGL Energy. Now, I got about 34 cents per kilowatt charged on that. And because I had an EV and it was registered to my house, you know, they do check the license plate before they enable this plan. I was on the EV Saver plan. So what that meant was I got 8 cents per kilowatt between 12 midnight and 6 a.m. each morning. So normally I would charge the vehicles, and it would take anywhere from 2 to 3 days to actually charge a vehicle, specifically from solar. Every now and then I'd have to use the grid, or when we would organize those road trips and I definitely needed 100% charge that night, I would actually charge it from the 8 cents per kilowatt between midnight and 6 a.m. And doing that only really cost a couple of dollars. So, you know, it did cost money, but nothing compared to petrol prices that you see with this oil problem that they got overseas. So that's how I was with AGL Energy for quite a while, up until installing the home battery in February of 2026. Things changed. I mean, my options then opened, and I was looking at Amber for quite a long time. I actually heard quite a number of good things about Amber Electric, but it doesn't really cater to people without home batteries. I mean, of course you can use them, but it doesn't make sense without home batteries. And why is that? There's a number of reasons for it. Number one, if you have a home battery and you're on their VPP, there's a lot of benefit to actually doing it with them controlling it. Number two, if you're producing, because it's a wholesale pricing company, all they'll do is forward the wholesale price. When the wholesale price is negative, which means a lot of green energy is in the grid, it's actually better if you draw from the grid at that point with negative income. If you're actually feeding in, when it's negative, you're actually paying to feed into the grid. And without a home battery with curtailment, you can't actually stop that. You're actually paying for electricity to send to the grid. It's crazy, but it's true. So you really do need a home battery if you're moving to a supplier like Amber Electric. So that's how I was for a number of years with AGL Energy. You know, getting the solar, halving my bill, charging the cars from home, mostly from solar. When I needed to go onto the road trips, I would charge using the 8 cents between midnight and 6 a.m. And I lived like that for some time, but still, you know, paying money for electricity every quarter, $550 to $600. It's still a good amount of money, even though I saved and cut my bills in half by getting solar panels onto the roof. So when I actually got the home battery, my options really opened up. I started to look at Amber, I started to look at GloBird, I started to look at Flow Power, I started to look at OVO Energy. You know, there's many vendors that open up once you've got a home battery. And because I heard a lot of good things about Amber, I decided to give them a shot first. My neighbor had it installed. You know, he was in credit, I think, for the first 6 weeks. he had about $30 or $40 because there was a spike in the grid at the time, and they paid him, I think, $8 per kilowatt during that spike period. So, and you get a referral program. So they do offer good referrals. If a neighbor or a friend refers you, you get about $120 a year off your bill and off their bill. So one of the criteria that I set for myself when installing the home battery was not to have just reduced bills, but to have zero bills at least. At least. I wanted zero electricity bills. That's one of the benefits of having a home battery. I started to think, why would I invest tens of thousands of dollars in a home battery and still pay electricity bills? That just didn't make sense to me. So it's not only the return on investment, but also zero bills. And of course, as a bonus, if I could get credit for feed-ins, fantastic. If I can't, I still would be quite happy with just having zero bills. And Amber do have a great referral service. What that means is if you had a referral code, you could enter that referral code straight into the application as you're first applying for it. You get $120 off. The person you get the referral code from gets $120 off their bill. It's paid in installments, so $10 a month for 12 months. Basically everyone wins. It's a great system. Now, let me first say, as a precursor to anything I'm discussing here, I'm not actually going to criticize Amber whatsoever. I think they're doing a great service for our Australian community. However, I'm only going to talk about my experiences with Amber as I went through the system, because I did watch a lot of videos and a lot of people recommending. And for, those people, I guess it does work. For me, unfortunately, it didn't work. And as you know, I've already discussed what I have with solar panel, home battery, the My Energy Zappy charger, and the 2 EVs I have. So let's quickly go through some good points of Amber. Firstly, they only charge you a service fee, and that's where they make their money. Everything else is essentially wholesale pricing passed on from the wholesale provider in your area. Now, in my area, it's Endeavour Energy. Closer to the city, it's Ausgrid. This is all in Sydney, New South Wales. Other states have their own suppliers, but the wholesale provision at the time is provided by your wholesale supplier, and that's just passed on from Amber. So what I would typically see is at night, it could go as high as 30 cents, 28 cents, 27 cents per kilowatt, that is. And during the day, when there's a lot of green energy and renewables in the grid, it can go as low as 7 cents, 5 cents, sometimes even 3 cents and 2 cents, especially when there's over 90% of renewables in the grid. So it does work in that way, and it can lower your bills from your regular suppliers. Like for me, it was AGL. I'll definitely pay less than I used to pay with AGL while I was on Amber. One of the benefits of Amber is when you do get a spike, essentially when you're on the VPP and there's grid instability and the VPP providers are required to supply energy into the grid, you can get really good prices on that. But, I didn't experience that in my 11 days with Amber, but I'm sure other people have in the past, and they're getting $100, $150, $180, those sort of things. I'm not saying anything there because, great for those people. It works out for them. But because I didn't experience it, I can't really comment too much. But what I do recognize is the more solar and the more battery into the grid, the more stabilization it is on the grid, which means these spikes that maybe were more prevalent earlier, they wouldn't happen as much now, because the more battery systems, the more VPP systems, the more solar energy, it does stabilize the grid. So a lot of the advantage of actually looking for those spikes and gaining from those spikes, I think they're going to be reduced over time. Now, some of the things I was challenged with while I was with Amber is, firstly, the prices are volatile. So I found myself regularly monitoring the app to find out what the price was at the time when I needed to say, do the dishwasher, I needed to do the washing machine, I needed to do the pool filter, those types of things. Anything that was drawing current from the battery, I was concerned about. So I would always check, okay, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And so forth. That was the first challenge, was I regularly had to check the wholesale price. I didn't really trust the VPP, especially as I was new to the program. Number two, I need to charge two EVs at the time when I need them. And, you know, we do drive quite regularly. And what I found is no matter what I did, especially when solar was being produced or it wasn't being produced enough, no matter what I did, I still found myself paying for electricity to charge the EVs. Even when it was cheap at 7 cents a kilowatt, I still had to pay. Even if it's a couple of dollars, I still had to pay. And I never found really an opportunity to actually charge the EVs without paying. And remember, I would aim to charge the home battery to 100% every day. So when the price gets high, like 10 cents or 15 cents feed-in tariff, I'd want to generate credit by feeding back into the grid at those higher feed-in rates. So I would get a couple of dollars here and there during that time, and, you know, manually controlling it initially because I didn't really trust the VPP at that time, even though I was on it. So those were the two main challenges that I had. Really, the third one also is, you know, when I did need to take a road trip, like those camping videos I did those while I was with Amber. I needed to charge the vehicles. I had no choice but to actually pay the money. You know, even at 30 cents and 25 cents, I would typically fill the car at about $12 or $13 to fill the car so we could then organize the camping trip. You know, you have no choice. When you need to charge the battery, you need to charge the battery. It doesn't matter what the price is. And that's what I found with Amber, is there was no free period, technically speaking, where with AGL, I would always have the opportunity to charge from 12 a.m. midnight to 6 a.m. in the morning and only pay a couple of dollars. That option did not exist with Amber. And that was a challenge for me to actually do that.